resuming debate, the honourable member for New Westminster, Coquitlam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in solidarity with the thousands of postal workers who have been locked out by Canada Post. Mr. Speaker, there are three postal depots in my riding, one in New Westminster, one in Coquitlam, and another in Port Moody. And I'd like to thank all the workers in those depots. I've talked to many of them, and I know of their good work. I know how hard they've been working, and I know how much this affects them, and I know how much this means to them. And here we now have proposed legislation by this government that, if adopted, would legislate those workers back to work. And this legislation put forward by the Conservative government basically makes a mockery of the fair collective bargaining processes that thousands of Canadians, men and women, have fought so hard for. Mr. Speaker, I've had the honour and privilege to rise in this House many times to speak on critical issues facing our country, but few issues have motivated me more than the issue of pension protection. And I believe everyone has the right to retire with dignity. As a society, we not only accept this, Mr. Speaker, but we have worked hard to ensure this by legislating public pension plans. Mr. Speaker, working families are not looking for a free ride. They have bargained their pensions in good faith with their employer, diverting their wages into pension plans so they would have some measure of security upon retirement. This legislation denies those workers the fruits of their labor. Mr. Speaker, we should be bringing employment and standard of living up and not tearing them down. We should be supporting family-sustaining jobs, not promoting a race to the bottom. We should be building a better world for our parents and our children, not pulling the rug out from underneath them. This legislation, Mr. Speaker, is the first volley into what no doubt will be a long and sustained attack on public pensions across our country. But don't take it from me. My office has heard from many in my riding, those who will be affected by this legislation, and here's what they had to say. Charisma, a full-time letter carrier in Coquitlam. Since the last contract expired, she, along with her colleagues, has worked to help Canada Post meet and exceed target goals in performance and revenue. She believes that Canada Post has not negotiated in good faith, and that this legislation regards the corporation, one, for refusing to address health and safety concerns, two, for refusing to negotiate, and three, for locking out its workers and creating this unnecessary halt to the mail. Kerry is a 17-year employee at Canada Post who says that his pension is his only hope of living above the poverty line when he retires. And this is a quote, "We have taken large cutbacks in every agreement since I joined the Postal Service," said Kerry. "If we lose any more, we'll have one of the world's worst in the public service. All we ask for is fair treatment," unquote. Another postal worker in my riding expressed her frustration with the time value system through which workers' current pay is established. Parcels on mobile routes and withheld mail are not included in the calculation, giving postal workers more mail to carry and forcing them to work through lunch in order to complete their route on time and avoid discipline for overtime. She wants to know why this government is attacking postal workers. Government jobs should be good, respectable jobs that we can be proud of. Michelle has been a letter carrier for 20 years in New Westminster. She loves her job. She's a single mom with 2 children who struggles to make ends meet. Her route is 1,233 points of call. Starting at 6:30 a.m. every morning, she's often not finished her route until 5 p.m. when her children arrive home from school. She delivers more mail now than she did 10 years ago, and that doesn't include the pounds of flyers. She worries about the next generation of postal workers and whether her job will even be viable employment for future workers. She has generously offered for the Minister of Labour to accompany her on her route sometime, and I would be happy to facilitate such a visit. Shannon, a 9-year employee, is concerned about her sick benefits and pension plan. She says the physical impact of doing her job takes its toll on her body. She knows many co-workers who require surgery from work-related injuries such as carpal tunnel syndrome and knee and hip degeneration. William, a letter carrier in New West, has worked for Canada Post for several years. He supports a wife and 2 children. He'd like to retire with Canada Post, but fears a forced collective agreement would make that difficult. Mirko is a 16-year postal worker veteran. He has 2 kids and a mortgage. He's seen many changes since he began as a letter carrier. He says his route has taken an average mortal 10 hours, or would take an average mortal 10 hours to complete, for which he receives 8 hours of pay. 3 years ago, 10.5 routes were eliminated from the area and everyone's route was lengthened. Injuries went up. 16 years ago, he delivered 2 trays, about 1,000 letters on his route. Today, he delivers an average of 3 or 4 trays. Now, Leanne is a letter carrier in New Westminster. She's been employed by Canada Post for 19 years. She's 39 years old. She was just re-elected as the Secretary-Treasurer of the Royal City Local for the 3rd term. This means she works in the union office at least 10 days a month, doing the financials and many other office duties as specified in her local bylaws. She fully believes that the only reason that she is not severely injured from her duties as a letter carrier is the simple fact that she gets a break from the physical aspect of delivering mail when she works for the union. New Westminster, BC, part of my riding, is a quickly growing community. She mentions that she looks out the window on East Columbia Street and watches the high-rises go up at the old brewery site as she types this email. She says even though they are delivering to many more points of call in the city, and all others in her local Canada Post have restructured their routes and cut the number of routes in every office for the last several years. In September 2009, the New West Depot was restructured. The end result was that 86 routes became 75, with the wave of management's magic wand. They lost 11 full-time employees, plus 1 relief carrier in their depot. Every route suddenly had hundreds more points of calls. This meant that they were spending hours more every day on the street. They were carrying more pounds of mail every day. They were working 10, 12, even 14 hours a day at work. They were delivering in the dark, in the snow, and on steep hills. So how does Canada Post react? They gave them ice cleats and headlamps. And though the winter season, approximately 1/3, and through the winter season, approximately 1/3 of the letter carriers were injured on the job and either were completely off or unable to do their full duties. Canada Post responded by forcing those who happened to still be able-bodied to do compulsory overtime on other routes, and after they'd finished their own. And Canada Post challenged every WCB and WorkSafe claim that was put in by the members. Many were denied. Many members stopped reporting the injuries. They simply gave up. Leanne reports that she has been left with plantar fasciitis and wakes up with foot pain every day. She says she can handle all of this, but what she can't tolerate is the fact that she did not see her 5-year-old son during the first week of their new routes. Now, she goes on to talk about her son and the impacts on the fact that she doesn't see her son, that her parents and her grandparents are involved in raising her son because she has to work overtime. She talks about being sick and getting hurt on the job. She talks about how Manulife, the third-party disability management provider, is involved in every case and questions every single claim that workers put in. But the point here, Mr. Speaker, is that the physical the health and the mental health affects families, it affects their jobs. And the biggest issue that she faces here is now having to be legislated back to work. Having that crammed down her throat is something that she feels appalled by. Mr. Speaker, these are moments that will define a generation. How will we look workers in the eye when we leave this chamber? This draconian legislation tears down decades of collective bargaining legislation that people in this country have worked so hard to put in place. We have an obligation to honor the agreements that we make with workers. We have an obligation to protect pensions. Mr. Speaker, it's the right thing to do, and along with the concerns around pensions, we must act to protect good wages for all workers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.